Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody is doing good. So, now we start with the sixth chapter, Economic Reform since 1991, or the New Economic Policy. The previous chapter we had taken up whatever changes took place in our economy from 1947, that is from 1950 onwards, up to 1990. Now, after 1990, that is from the problems which the economy had to face during 1990. As a result of that, it was forced to adopt the new economic policy. Now, the meaning of economic reforms and the new economic policy. Economic reforms refers to a set of economic policies directed to accelerate the pace of growth and development in a country. In 1991, the Government of India initiated a series of economic reforms to pull the economy out of the crisis of 90s. So, the new economic policy, the broad components are what? The policy of liberalization in place of licensing for industries and trade. Earlier, the industries had to take license for opening up in the private sector, but now after the liberalization, the industries can open easily on their own. The policy of privatization in place of quotas, that is, no restrictions are there. Privatization means the policy of privatization. Private sector has been strengthened much more as compared to what it was before 1991. The policy of globalization, that is, our economy is open to the world economy now as far as exports and imports of goods and services is concerned. Now we take up the elements of NEP in detail. The very first is liberalization, then we have privatization, and then we have the globalization. Let us start with the first one, liberalization. Liberalization, from the very word it means, the policy shows how liberal the government had become. Yes. So let us see, liberalization of the economy means freedom of producing units from direct or physical controls imposed by the government. That is, the government had made so many industries free from its control. So prior to 1991, the government had imposed several types of restrictions or controls on the private enterprises. So these included the industrial licensing. Yes, for opening up any industry, license had to be taken. Price control was there. The price was governed by the government. Price of any commodity or service. Financial controls were imposed on the industries to sell their goods. Import license they had to procure. Foreign exchange control was there. That is, the amount of foreign exchange they could spend. Even this was restricted. Restrictions were there on the investment by the big houses, big business houses. They could not invest even if they wanted to, without the permission of the government. Then the next point, it was experienced by the government that several shortcomings had emerged in the economy on account of these controls. Yes, these controls were not helping the economy to grow in any way as the government had perceived before 1991. So these controls had given rise to corruption, the undue delays in the production, and inefficiencies. All these led to the stagnation and also to the losses, huge losses in the government enterprises. So the growth rate of GDP had fallen sharply as a result of all this, and the high cost economic system, that is, the cost of production was much more as compared to the price at which the commodities and the services were sold, so that the government had started going into huge losses. Now, to do away with this, the government had started with the policy of liberalization. Let us talk about in detail what the liberalization was. So, industrial sector reforms. So, we have different reforms in liberalization. The first one is the reforms which are brought in the industrial sector. The very first was abolition of the industrial licensing. It means what? In July 1991, a new industrial policy was announced. It abolished the requirement of the license, except for a few industries like liquor, cigarette, defense equipment, industrial explosives, and the dangerous chemicals. Apart from these, no license was not required to open up any industry. Contraction of public sector. Under the new industrial policy, the number of industries reserved for public sector solely, they were reduced from 17 earlier to only 8. In 1011, the number of industries reduced to only 2, atomic and railways. Now everyone must be knowing even the railways have started being privatized. So we have only atomic energy, which is solely under the public sector. Then de-reservation of production areas. So many production areas, they were reserved for the small scale industries earlier. This was to protect the small scale industries from the competition from the big industries. Now the forces of the market were allowed to determine allocation of the results of the resources, yes, of the government. But now the area that is, it is made free. All those commodities which were produced by the small scale industries can also be produced by the large scale industries depending on the demand. Then expansion of production capacity. Earlier, even to expand the existing capacity, the industries had to take license from the government. But now no such constraints are there. Yes, depending on the producer's capacity, he can expand the size of his industry, open up new industries, yes, as and when he wants. There is no restriction. Now, freedom to import capital goods. Earlier, the capital goods which were required for the expansion of the industrial base in our country, for modernization of the industries in our country, even their import was limited before 1991. Yes. So, but after the 1991 economic policy, permission is granted to import any capital good which the producer requires to upgrade the technology. Yes. So this is about the first one, industrial sector reforms.